if they want to. Talk don't bother me. I want the whole wide world to know.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DeRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And we're proud to have as our guest Joseph Carranza, who is an activist with the 9/11 Truth Group. And since this is September 11th and we're in New York, we're going to talk, and this half hour, we're going to dedicate this half hour to September 11th, 2001, the events that happened there, and to our deepening our understanding of those events and the significance they've had on our lives and on the world in an ongoing series of programs in which we've covered every angle, and we continue to cover angles. I couldn't help but notice in the last few days many people, maybe you, the viewers, saw them going around town with signs and banners and marches talking about some alternative explanation for
Well, we
September
just saw
11th.
Someone on the subway on the way here that had a sign.
Right.
And
it was
it
very
provoked a reaction in the crowd, and it was very crowded.
definitely,
It's rush hour traffic on the subway.
Right. So, Joseph, we're going to talk with you about that. Maybe you could begin by telling us a little bit about yourself. How did you come to, where were you on September 11th, so to speak?
On September 11th, as I told you before, I worked as an electrician in the city here, and I was at the CBS building on 52nd Street and 6th Avenue. I was working on the 7th floor of that building, and that's when I first learned of the event, the 9/11 event, on the radio, listening. I think my coworkers had it tuned to the Howard Stern show, so he was speaking about that.
Right. And Joni, where were you on September 11th?
Well, I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was with my father and my mother, and my mom had just had an operation. And so we drove my mother from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to West Virginia on September 11th. And we drove through Somerset County just before the plane hit there.
That Somerset County, for folks who don't know, is where Flight 93...
Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Flight 93 crashed.
Allegedly.
Right, so we're going to talk more about that. Right.
And we also have to ask Paul, where were you on September 11th?
Well, I'll tell you where I was on September 11th. I was right here in New York City, just a few blocks away.
Oh, we have breaking news. It looks like a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. There is a huge explosion and fire at the top of the World Trade Center. This is a live broadcast at 8:52 in the morning. We have no story right now as to the cause, if it's an accident or was intentional, but it looks like the top half of both towers are absolutely in flames. This is a huge disaster. Be careful. Stay out of the lower Manhattan area. We're going to get headlines on this story and be back as soon as we can with updates. Again, live at this moment, an aircraft or something has exploded into the top floors of the World Trade Center, causing a massive disaster situation. A lot of smoke coming out of the tops of the building. This is live. We will come back to you in a moment. Why don't you put up the TV right now? Let's listen to what they're saying.
And that's me on the air at WBAI here in New York City.
Which is located in the financial district.
On 120 Wall Street, just right there on the South Street overlooking the East River. And we first knew something was happening when we looked out the window, our big picture windows of the studio, and saw, as you'll hear later in the tape, it was as if it was a blizzard of snowing 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, as well as the dust and smoke. Behind us is a photograph I snapped the next day on the 12th of a damaged...
In the top,
Here's some more.
an A-shaped hole, a gigantic hole in the side of one of the Twin Tower buildings. It is burning. There's smoke coming out of it. It looks like a major disaster has occurred in downtown Manhattan.
Apparently there's paper flying all around outside of our windows right here at 120 Wall Street.
That's Marjorie
Max
Moore.
Schmee just came in to say.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can see it from
Plenty
here.
of smoke, both towers.
It's a major disaster, and you have to understand the World Trade Center just 7 years ago was the target of a terrorist bombing attack. that injured and killed 6 people and injured 1,000. And we don't know what is the nature of this, if it was just an accident or intentional, but it looks like a disaster has occurred in Lower Manhattan. This will be dominating our news throughout the whole world in the United States, I'm sure, today. And stay tuned for Democracy Now! And I'm sad to report the disaster.
You were warning people don't come downtown.
Absolutely, and to this day, people still come up to me and say, which I think, you know, it's fun to have it happen, but really, you make your own decisions in life, and like hug me and like cry and say, I heard not to go to work. I worked in the World Trade Center, and when I heard what you were saying on the radio, I didn't go to work.
Don't go downtown.
Right.
They probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere near it at that time anyway.
Right, hopefully. And so that is a snippet of that morning. We were on actually all that day. Marjorie Moore, Dana Beal was with me in the studio. Jose Santiago came in later, and we had many.
And Eric Williams was reporting from the field.
Right, he was out there right under the building as it fell. Eric Williams, it was just a really people at WBAI really pulling together and at their best
and
their finest.
From the office.
It was an office intern who went out and
did a bang-up job.
He was standing underneath the building as people were falling, really jumping and falling out of the sides of the building, and he was shielding his eyes as he interviewed witnesses.
He was a temp from a office temp agency.
He was an office temp agency. And he took the microphone out and
did his own reporting.
Right, and Utrice Lead, who was our general manager, and others who played a great role in that day. So we're here now to talk about what happened. Well, we saw with our own eyes. I saw with my own eyes what we're all experienced here in New York, and
we've had a series of shows about 9/11 with people from different perspectives as to how to explain what happened. So I'm curious what your perspective is.
Well, of course, we saw the planes strike the buildings, but what we couldn't see is who was in control of the planes and how were they controlling the planes. So those are things that we couldn't see. It's peculiar as far as that's concerned that the alleged hijackers were not on the passenger lists for any of the doomed flights. That means that they got onto the planes without being on the official passenger list for the flights. Now, how does a person do that, you might ask? Another thing is that when it came time to list the people who were on the death rolls, meaning the people that had died on each flight, nor are any of the alleged hijackers on that list either. There is no video footage of the alleged hijackers going through the airport security to board any of the doomed flights. We saw video footage of the hijackers, the alleged hijackers, passing through airport security at the Portland, Maine airport. But we didn't see them at Logan, and we didn't see them at Newark, and we didn't see it at Dulles, the airlines of origination of the so-called doomed flights.
I want to talk more about the mechanics of the theory. What's interesting to me is what it implies, because what we're talking about here, and let's be serious about it, is saying that the United States government, who many people embrace and trust as their government, despite all, things that have happened in the past, would say that this is fantastical.
Well, is that your theory, though, that the U.S. government had something to do with
well,
this?
How do you, this is a revolutionary thing you're saying. I mean,
well, wait,
what's
he
the
didn't
purpose
say
of
it yet. Is that what you're saying?
The term, first we have to unpack the terms. We have to make sure that we're speaking the same language. Otherwise, it's if I'm speaking Greek and you're speaking Chinese. When you say the United States government, that is a generalization. It is a high-level abstraction. Now we've got to descend the ladder of high-level abstraction to understand what we mean by the use of that term.
Okay.
We all know that there's many good, decent, honest, hard-working people employed by the U.S. government who would consider themselves part of the U.S. government. No, that is not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying that this government, the people-serving government, the entity that is supposed to serve ostensibly as the people-serving government, has been hijacked. That itself has been hijacked and is being crashed into the rest of the world. And the people, there's a very small group of people who were aware of this plot and aware of this plan, and who took measures to bring this nightmare into existence.
In
So it's
your-
not.
In your opinion, what was the purpose of this plan? What was it? What was the reason for such a plan, such a horrific plan?
Well,
I don't want to minimize it, you know, because if it's true, it's horrific. If it's not true, it reflects something else in society. So either way, it's interesting to me. So.
Well, in order to really understand my position, I started doing a lot of investigation after the 9/11 event, and some of the most important pieces of information that I discovered were things that were actually detached in history, in time, from the actual 9/11 event. And the thing, one of the things of primary importance as far as that's concerned is a thing called the Northwoods document.
Northwoods document. What's
Northwoods document. It was a document that was produced by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, signed off by Lyman Limnitzer, who was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, 1962.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The year that I was born. And the Northwoods document concocted a plan. It set forth a plan that would be carried out that involved false attacks, fake attacks. And one of the elements of the Northwoods plan was to fly planes in an intersecting pattern with the island of Cuba, and then to destroy those planes and to blame it on Cuba, to trick the American public into supporting a war against Cuba to destroy the revolutionary government of Fidel Castro. And they went so far in this Northwoods document, which can be viewed online. A simple Google search would reveal this newly declassified document. Also, the book by James Bamford called Body of Secrets, where he sets forth the elements of this Northwoods plan. Right? And the statement in the document was that the passenger list, the list of dead passengers, would create a helpful wave of public indignation, meaning that the American public would be outraged and they would support the war against Cuba. Another similar thing was the Gulf of Tonkin incident. If we see the film The Fog of War, we see the former Defense Secretary Robert McNamara speak about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and he says that it was a deception.
Joseph Carranza, we're actually live, and folks see our number down there, 212-757-1538, and we'll attempt to take your calls and your questions. If you have any comments about what you're hearing, try and call us up, and we'll try and take your call. 212-757-1538.
Now, Joseph, I wanted to ask something. Do you believe that Al-Qaeda exists?
Well, Al-Qaeda does exist. Al-Qaeda was created and funded and trained and armed by the Central Intelligence Agency that is in direct control of the President of the United States. So yes, Al-Qaeda does exist. According to a UN report that was created just before the attacks of 9/11, or just after, I'm not really sure, they said that there were approximately 500 members of Al-Qaeda, and that out of those 500 members, those core members of Al-Qaeda, the intelligence apparatus of many nations throughout the world were well represented, including our own FBI and our own CIA. And this is evidenced by the fact that in the wake of 9/11, when it came time to examine where all of these people were, their whereabouts and their activities prior to the 9/11 event, we know that this one was in Paris and met with this one, and we know that was discussed at that meeting, and they rented a car here and a hotel room there, and we knew just about every movement these people made prior to the 9/11 event, and yet couldn't prevent the attacks. In fact, the Able Danger Unit, are you familiar with that?
We've discussed Able Danger, and in fact, Peter Lance is here not agreeing with you, but also referring to Able Danger, which is interesting to me that both sides are making use of this. But go ahead. I see a point of unity between the two factions or two sides.
Well, you know, if we
seeing that the government, how the mechanism.
Have you read Peter Lance's books?
Have you read his books?
No, I have not.
They're interesting books, but he basically, his theory lays out that Al-Qaeda exists and these guys did it, and basically the government was guilty, but more of extreme incompetence to the point of criminality.
Well, the fact that several of these...
What you're saying is more of you're talking about like the Reichstag fire here, right?
Well, yeah.
But
very
that's the
similar
difference.
to
I
the
mean,
rise
just
of
a-
fire. Another one
yeah.
of those things that detach from the 9/11 event that provide us insight into the actual
212-757-1538. We'll try and take your call if you are moved by what you're hearing here. These are very interesting allegations, very interesting bits of information. Let's discuss, now we sort of skipped over at the beginning the mechanisms of it, because what many people have often said, well, we have a call coming in, we'll give it a shot. I can't promise anything, but, oh, we missed them. All right, we'll try again. What many people have said in the past is that, well, you know, these are, how can you make the claim that there wasn't a plane at the Pentagon? How can you make a claim that people snuck into the Trade Center and planted explosives all the way through it? How can you, and then, you know, demolish the building? How can you claim, I don't know if you do or not, but, you know, in general, that Flight 93 was either shot down or was not actually crashed when we had these telephone conversations? It seems like people saw something with their own eyes, and the 9/11 movement is often criticized for denying their eyes. You're on.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Oh, there he is.
Hello?
Yes,
Hi.
we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, about 9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very sad day, because it's
Sorry. Go ahead.
because when I was in school at the time when the
Do you have a question?
The question is, do you think that they're gonna make the building stronger? You think when they build it?
Interesting question.
Okay. All right.
All right, good
Now,
question.
if the official explanation for the destruction of the World Trade Center is true and correct, assuming that is true and correct, which is basically a fire theory, that fire brought down the buildings. That
Right.
because even the engineers, the chief engineers of the building, said that the amount of structural damage that was done by the crash of the planes was insignificant. That load had shifted to other columns. The Trade Center being a highly redundant structure.
Sure. That
Right.
means it's what does
Those are
redundant
the
mean?
backup.
Redundant means that there was the load could shift to many other supporting columns and
Still
structural
stand.
steel, yes.
Right.
You know, similar to, I've heard it compared to if you took a pencil and stuck it through a screen, you know, on your window that you
Sure.
have, like, and the screen doesn't collapse because you stuck the pencil through it. You know,
Right.
It's just a screen there with the pencil stuck through
Right.
it.
Right.
That's the type of structure that you're talking about with
Right.
the Trade Center. Now,
Yeah.
if the fire theory is true and correct, that this raging fire created by the jet fuel, which the FEMA report itself says that most of the jet fuel burned up on impact, and all of the jet fuel burned up within 10 minutes. So basically like your average hydrocarbon fire, and not even like an extremely hot hydrocarbon fire, not a long-lasting one, and not one that spread to from floor to floor as a very hot fire would do. A hot fire would cause the windows to shatter. As we've seen in other high-rise buildings that burned for 15 hours, 17 hours, and the building did not collapse. But yet the Trade Center, we're expected to believe, burned for about 56 minutes and maybe an hour and 10 minutes, respectively,
before it
Towers 1 and Towers 2 before collapsing. Now, if that's true, then the insurance codes, right, the building codes, and the standards by which these buildings are, the insurance rates for these buildings are concocted and arrived at, should have been completely revamped, completely redone. But yet, what do we see? There should have been an absolute cancellation, right? A withholding of every structure that was proposed to be built until we can figure out how to build these buildings.
Better,
right?
stronger
I see.
building.
Right? If the official theory is true. But yet, what's happening down at Ground Zero as we speak? A tower being constructed in pretty much the same way, the same type of structure, a steel and concrete structure, rising up 1,700 feet. That's what's being built there.
Right.
So you're
When-
saying it's no more safe than the other one?
Right. If that theory is true, if the
Right.
fire theory is true, all this construction should be stopped until new high-tech materials can be
What
developed.
happened across the
Right,
street
good
at the
question.
Deutsche Bank building?
Good question.
That is a good question. 212-757-1538. We'll take your questions. And, well, you've made us think. You've made us think, Joseph Carranza. Now, I'm thinking,
Oh.
It's deep. It's very deep.
Well, the
You
most
know, because
troubling
the
thing to me,
implications- yeah,
Paul,
right.
the most troubling thing to me is that 6 years after the event, that nobody has been brought to justice, that nobody has been prosecuted, nobody has been...
Zacharias Moussaoui.
Well, Moussaoui, let me rephrase the statement then.
Okay.
Nobody being proven to have any involvement of any real significance in the 9/11 attack has been prosecuted. There are many who feel that Moussaoui was a psychotic dupe that was in the control of the FBI in the first instance.
Well, some people would say everyone is dead. That's why
Well,
there hasn't
that's
been a
not really
prosecution.
true. I had mentioned before that 7 of the alleged hijackers have turned up alive. One gentleman walking into the Moroccan embassy proclaiming he was alleged to have stabbed someone on Flight 93. And he walked into the Moroccan embassy and said, well, I didn't do any of those things. He's a pilot for some airline, or he works for some construction company. These people have turned up alive, and it was covered by the Observer of London and other sources. As a matter of fact, things like the film 9/11 Mysteries, which you can go to online, a simple Google search will reveal the film 9/11 Mysteries. That's been aired on Australian.
Oh, really? Any website, though. That reminds me, so if you want to give some websites.
Well,
definitely go ahead.
one of the most important websites, I feel, is WTC7.net. And there you can see the films of what I consider the most damning piece of evidence in the whole 9/11, direct evidence of the obvious falsity of the official explanation of 9/11. Now, the official 9/11 report dealt with the problem, with the anomaly of World Trade Center 7 flying apart at 5:30 p.m. on that day. They dealt with the problem of this building, this 47-story steel modern office tower flying apart at 5:30. They dealt with the problem of explaining that by not even mentioning it in the official 9/11 report. There's no mention of the mysterious.
Let's say 7 World Trade Center was really not part of the actual square that the World Trade Center and most of the other buildings were on. It was separated across Vesey Street, right?
Yes.
And now there's a new building there. It was the first one reconstructed on the south
I
side.
actually worked on it.
Okay, there you go.
And wasn't that where the
what do you think of the safety of that building?
Well, it's fine until the government, the criminal enterprise that masquerades as our government, decides to perpetrate the next deception to trick the public into wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran and North Korea and Venezuela and Cuba, as set forth in the Project for a New American Century.
So we're in Iraq now. The president got what he wanted. It didn't really turn out that great in the end. I mean,
well,
nobody's saying that Iraq was a great success. They're saying whether or not they're going to get out in 6 months or 2 years, or make it worse by going into Iran.
Well, again, when we make sweeping generalizations, such as it's not going well, or it wasn't a success, we must take care to specify for who, right? For who? For the people in power, in positions of power and control. It was an enormous success. They've used the 9/11 event to expand and solidify and maintain their wealth and their power and control. It's been an enormous success.
In that way,
it hasn't worked out particularly well for the people, either the people of the victim nation or our troops who have been put in harm's way for all of the wrong reasons. It hasn't worked out too well for
all
them.
the people who are grieving today. I mean, this is a very painful day for a lot of people.
Right. And
And
that's
not
why,
just people who lost people in their family, but people who are sick now because of the airborne contaminants. And
Right, and I can say there were definitely people who are not very happy with Christine Whitman, who was at the time in charge of looking into the environmental effects of it, who said it was safe, you know, and other government officials who said it was safe. And people went down there thinking it was safe for months. I mean, I walked by it myself. I didn't work in it, but I walked by it to work at WBAI every day for months. And nobody was told that that air wasn't fresh, that it wasn't pure, that just because you didn't smell anything didn't mean you weren't breathing it in.
so where is the line between people who believe in government incompetence and people who believe in an actual conspiracy? Like, where does that line fall in this belief systems?
Well, there really is no evidence in support that I've seen for the incompetence theory. Just take Condoleezza Rice's testimony in front of the 9/11 Commission, where she says that nobody could have imagined that such an attack would take place. Meanwhile, just a few weeks before the 9/11 event, she was in Genoa, Italy with George Bush attending the G8 summit there. And a plot was uncovered to fly a plane into the G8 summit. It is inconceivable that the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States was not completely briefed about the plot to fly a plane into the G8 summit. So what did she mean when she appeared just a few weeks later, a few months later actually, in front of the 9/11 Commission, and basically lied and said, well, nobody could have imagined this, when there are many national security documents that picture the World Trade Center with crosshairs like it's a target. Also, there were multiple simultaneous war games being conducted that morning, and the focus of the war games between a joint venture between the CIA and every branch of the U.S.
September
Armed
11th,
Forces.
2001.
On the morning of September 11th, there were war games being conducted, right?
Right.
The focus of the war games was to defend against a plane into building scenario at the World Trade Center complex at 8:30 in the morning. What a coincidence! And we see.
I didn't know about this.
Oh yeah.
Where is this reported?
Well, there's little mention of it, if any, in the official 9/11 Commission report.
Really? It's mentioned in there.
But
I'll have to look it up. I have it at home. I can't say I've read that.
Look it up and look for Operation Vigilant Guardian, Operation Vigilant Warrior, and Operation Northern Vigilance, right, in
Now,
particular.
Joseph, do you think that all different terrorist attacks are coming out of the same conspiracy, or do you think that there's some that are really terrorists and some that are government-induced? Like, say, the subway bombing in England. Like, do you think that that ties into the World Trade Center conspiracy, or that it's a separate entity?
There's a film I would recommend that you watch, and the name of the film is called Ludicrous Diversions. And it tells the story of the London bombings, a similar exercise being carried out in the London subways involving up to 1,000 people. A similar exercise that was engineered, designed to defend against the exact same type of attack that occurred later on that morning. And who is on the same block as one of the subway stations who were bombed? Who's there? Adolf Giuliani, a.k.a. Rudolph Giuliani.
All right, we have 40 seconds left to go. I wanted to give you an opportunity to sum up and to give out your website and
yes,
any other
first
information.
thing I'd like to mention is that tomorrow night at Union Square Park at 7 o'clock, there will be a screening. It's a permitted event. You can view the film 9/11 Mysteries. And the folks from 9/11 Truth will be at the southwest corner of Union Square Park by the Gandhi statue at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. So tomorrow night you can go out and view 9/11 Mysteries. Another film that I highly recommend is this Zeitgeist movie. Can we get a closer shot of that? Zeitgeist. And what that is, it's a film that challenges us to